Hello, dear friends. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're watching us. Have a good rest of your day. I'm Daniel Cameron. Welcome to my podcast on YouTube. We continue our meetings with the outstanding leaders under the rubric of keeping the faith. My guests shared their thoughts and wisdom about the role of faith in the life of a modern person and about the importance of interfaith communication and mutual assistance. The link to my interviews are in the comment under the video. Please react to the podcast, like, share, subscribe. All reactions are very welcome. Today, we meet with Rabbi Meir Azari. Rabbi Azari is a founder of Beit Daniel. Under the leadership of Rabbi Azari over the past 33 years at Beit Daniel, located in North Tel Aviv, has become the Daniel Centers. Rabbi Azari received his undergraduate degree in Jewish history and political science from Haifa University and his rabbinical ordination from Hebrew Union College in Jerusalem. He studied at Hebrew University, San Francisco University, and the Graduate Jewish Theological Seminary in Berkeley, California. In 2017, Rabbi Azari received an honorary doctorate from Hebrew Union College. Dear Rabbi Meir, thank you for the wonderful opportunity to learn from you.
Daniel, thank you for having me here. It looks like a very interesting initiative that you bring to the Jewish world. So I'm very happy to be here. I follow your conversation with Peter Rubenstein, my mentor, my friend. So I'm very happy to follow him. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Rabbi Meir, as far as I know, you're a sabra. Sabar in Hebrew is a thorny cactus that has sweet fruits. The word sabar is also used to describe a person born in Israel. The cactus is compared to Israelis, tough on the outside but sweet on the inside. Could you please tell us about your roots? Who are your ancestors? How long have your roots been in the land of Israel?
Wow, complicated question and probably answer. I'm a mixed, coming from a mixed family. From one side, my father's side, my family lives in Israel for hundreds of years. The name Azari means the short people in the Arab language. And this is the assumption of President Ben-Zvi that researched the families, the history of those families that didn't leave Israel or were in the land of Israel, Palestine then, before the Zionist movement started. So from one side, I'm from a very poor, very unsophisticated Sephardic family that used to live in an Arab environment. My family used to live in Shfal'am in the north, in Haifa, and in a village called Zamarin next to Zichron Yaakov, in the middle of the road between Tel Aviv and Haifa. So this is one side of the family, very unsophisticated Sephardic, uneducated Jewish family. And from the other side, my mother's side, my grandmother was born in Old Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem, and my grandfather was born in Poland. So the mix is enormous there. My wife claimed that the Polish side won. I look like more Polish than a Sephardic Jew. Who knows? But this is the story. Story of I think many families lives in Israel. We're talking about Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazic Jews. I think that most of the Jews live today in Israel in mixed families, and this is me. I'm the first one in the family that went to achieve higher education. Very different than my wife's family that come from Vilnius. I think having generation upon generation of higher education. So the mix is very complicated.
Thank you for that answer. Truly interesting, and it is really interesting how Jewish
Think
roots.
about how the Sephardic family and the Ashkenazic family, that none of them knew what is Reform Judaism or Progressive Judaism, react when they saw me, going in that direction. Really a huge gap between who I am and the place that I come from.
So a follow-up question to that, in when it comes to Judaism in Israel, there are predominantly Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox Jews. How did you, born in Israel, choose to become a Reform rabbi?
Coincidence. My family wanted to send me to a good school in Haifa, where I grew. And they couldn't afford Reali, the best school then in that time in Haifa. So they sent me to Lobeck School, a very good school, but not a private school. Then in Haifa, Lobeck School belonged to the Reform movement. And there I found the Reform story, the option to be a Jew and not to be an Orthodox Jew. I grew up in what we call in Israel, as I said earlier, a mixed family, but Judaism was not present in the spirit of the family. Although my father came from a very traditional Sephardic background, I saw synagogue just once or twice a year in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The family didn't keep any kashrut, I mean, I was a secular Israeli, as most of us in that time. Of course, my family, my mother's side family was not any kind of a traditional or Orthodox Jew. My grandfather came from the Holocaust, didn't want to hear about God and Judaism and all that. That's, Israel is the story, Zionism is the story. So I found myself at Leo Beck discovering Reform Judaism, and I started to go to a synagogue by myself, and I step by step entered to that direction of Judaism. I felt very comfortable in that environment, and I felt that this is a great answer for my life. It was quite interesting earlier in the story of Judaism history. Uh, And I find myself step by step entering to this story. I became a leader in the youth movement of the Reform movement. Quite early, I wanted to be a Reform rabbi, although I think the first Reform rabbi was ordained in 1977 in Israel. So I met until that point just Reform rabbis that came from North America or England or Germany. And I early in my life thought that that would be a great route. My family couldn't understand that. I still remember conversation with my parents, my grandparents. Um, a rabbi, when you talk about rabbi in that time, rabbi was an Orthodox rabbi. That's the whole costume. This is what you want to do. How do you reform Judaism? What is reform Judaism? Who will come? How you will earn your living? I find myself in rabbinical school quite early after ending my years in the army. I served in the Navy as a navigator of a missile ship. Went to Haifa University and straight to the Hebrew Union College. I found myself in the age of 27, the director of the Reform movement in Israel. This is how small our movement was in that time. And since then, I'm part of the movement. I'm part of the growth of the movement. And the question of reform, what is a reform rabbi, is not a question anymore in Israel. So many people knows who we are, understand very well what we do, and the option that we offer to the Israeli society to be involved and part of the Jewish life, but not in the Orthodox or the Haredic life.
Thank you. Really interesting. I didn't realize that the Reform movement in Israel is this young. And
Daniel, the main mistake of the Reform movement, which is today the large Reform domination, was that they didn't put attention to the Zionist story. They didn't take it seriously. They saw that, oh, it's a dream that will somehow will fail. Most of our movement didn't see Israel, a Jewish state, as an option. And when Israel was declared in 48, the Reform movement didn't take Israel seriously. They didn't invest in Israel. That time, I wrote once an article about it. Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver, that was one of the main leaders of the Reform movement in America, North America, well known in Israel. He was the speaker on behalf of the Zionist movement in the United Nations decision to establish the state of Israel. And he didn't move to Israel. He stayed in the United States. You know, he had a very comfortable life in his synagogue. He was the leader of American Jewry. And he didn't make, or he and the establishment, the leadership of the movement didn't invest in Israel. You know, my synagogue, our synagogue in Tel Aviv, Beit Daniel, was opened in 91. This is the first synagogue in Israel that was built as a synagogue by the Reform movement. Can you understand how late we came to Israel? There were synagogue before, but in a kindergarten, preschools, you know, private apartment and clubs. But a real synagogue, like people in America knows, you know, like Temple Emmanuel here or Temple Emmanuel there. Just in 91, when Israel was already, well, 6 million, 7 million people, it's lunatic. It's a failure. And the same story with the conservative movement. And don't forget, Daniel, that most of our parents and grandparents came to Israel from countries that didn't know Reform Judaism, from Arab countries, East Europe, former Soviet Union, places that doesn't understand the concept of human rights, women's rights, pluralism, democracy, and this is why it's so difficult. Why it was, but it's still difficult to establish the spirit of reform or progressive or conservative, you know, Masorti movement in Israel. I think that we already crossed that line. I think that Israelis understand very well who we are. It will take a little bit of time, but I think that most of the Israelis are living like Reform Jews, but they don't know it. So Reform Judaism is so present in Israel. People will light candles on Shabbat, but they will do that after darkness, after the son or daughter came from the army. They will celebrate Shabbat. They won't celebrate it in an Orthodox way. They will light candles in Hanukkah. They will do Passover. They will come to synagogue from time to time. They will do bar mitzvah to the kids. So it's like what Reform conservative Jews are doing in America or all over the world, but the title is not there yet. It will be part of the story very, very soon.
Yes, and I hope that the reform movement will become more, I guess, accepted is the word, and more
Oh,
known to the
it's in a
people in
process.
Israel.
It's already a process, Daniel. When I came to Tel Aviv, first year of Beit Daniel, we had, I think, 10 or 15 bar mitzvot. Last year, I mean, the last, I think, 10 years, we have 250 bar mitzvot a year. Show me another synagogue in reform or conservative movement that has such a number of bar mitzvot. We have such a number of converts. Can you imagine to yourself a synagogue in America with that number of converts? I do in an average year 80 to 90 weddings. Can you point a rabbi in America? I mean, the numbers says that we are in the right direction. I said once in Haaretz, I was interviewed in Haaretz. I said, just put a synagogue everywhere in Israel. Put a rabbi there. Then man or woman, and you see immediately that the synagogue is growing. This is the picture that we see in every place that our movement put a synagogue. In Ramat HaSharon, in Herzliya, in Ra'anana, just name it. Wherever the synagogue is there, we are becoming part of the community. The problem, the obstacle, the challenge is to overcome the power of the establishment, the power of the Orthodox establishment. Can you imagine to yourself how many rabbis working in Tel Aviv area through an Orthodox, machinery? How much money the state of Israel invests compared to how much they don't invest in our community? Can you imagine to yourself the challenge of being a rabbi, a synagogue that doesn't give the budget for his salary, to maintenance of the synagogue, to build the synagogue? Can you imagine to yourself how challenging is this task? But we're changing the process through the courts, So our friends from all over the world, and this is a great opportunity to call to those who are listening, seeing this conversation. Invest in Israel in that way. Building progressive liberal Judaism is very, very important. It will bring Israel to the right place. It will take us from those concepts that brings us to the hills of the territories. Those who does not behave as Jews. They will bring us to normality, to 21st century. Bring Judaism to 21st century. Egalitarian communities between men and women, seeing Israel as part of the world, trying to see how we can bring light to the nation and not bring the ghetto from East Europe to Tel Aviv. Yeah, this is a great challenge, and we can win. It's a question of investment and love. And I'm calling to your the people that are listening to us, be part of it, be part of this process.
I definitely agree, and I'm glad to hear that the situation with the reform movement in Israel is improving. Uh, Following up this, talking about how there are different types of Judaism. Uh, when we talk about Abrahamic religions, can we talk about Judaisms, Christianities, and Islams? And how many Judaisms are there in Israel?
Oh, so many types of Jews in Israel, starting with the Haredim, ultra Haredim, Neturei Karta, you could call it, those who can't talk to the world and doesn't talk to modernity. They still live in the 15th, 16th century of Europe, the ghetto. From the other side, you have the secular Israelis, those who understand very well why they are in Israel. They understand very well the story, the history, but at the same time, they feel that Judaism does not, as they see it, does not answer to modernity. So you have from one side the ultra Orthodox. From the other side, you have the ultra secular Jews. They don't agree about almost anything. You can walk in Israel during the Independence Day, and you can see how they celebrate that day, and through that you can see the difference between the communities. The Jews that will raise black flag. It's like a disaster that happened to us, that the state was established. And from the other side, those who are in the Orthodox side that will say special prayers, will read a special reading from the Torah. So those who are celebrating Yom Ha'atzmaut, the Independence Day, as a major holiday, reading from the Torah, saying Hallel. And from the other side, Israel is a very complicated story. Judaism in Israel is a very complicated story. I think that in the middle between the ultra Orthodox and the secular Israelis, there's so many colors. One of them is our color, liberal Jews. And I think that if you count in the end of the day where most of the Israelis are, they are there. They want to live Jewish life in a certain way, not the Orthodox way. They want that Judaism will be part of their life, the history, the legacy, but they don't want to live it in the old way, the Orthodox, the ghetto, the shtetl. They want to be part of the world. So this is where we aim to bring that spirit to the secular Israelis and to teach them that you can live Jewish life not through the Orthodox way. You can live Jewish life not just through the secular Israeli way. So this is the task of Reform Judaism in Israel, by the way, very different than the task of Reform Judaism in the diaspora, that usually teach Jews that already belong to the synagogue, the parents, grandparents. When I come to North America, or most of the communities around the world, people would, I'm a member of this shul. My father was a member. My grandfather was a member of this shul. In our case, most of the people come to Reform Shul Israel are very young to tradition, are very young to synagogue. Most of our members are first in their family after 2 or 3 generations. So this is a very different form of Judaism than the one that you celebrate outside of Israel.
Um, and you were talking about how Jews in Israel tried to find, depending on type of Judaism they practice, um, the middle ground between unbreakable, unshakable rules and traditions and acceptance of modernity. What do you think should be more? Unbreakable rules and traditions and or modernity?
My role as a rabbi, my role as a Reform rabbi is to find the middle way, uh, not to leave the tradition, as sometimes I feel happens in the Reform movement, from the proposal that was failed years ago to celebrate Shabbat on Sunday, or different type of proposal, but at the same time we have to be part of modernity. We have to answer to the challenge like mixed marriage, like living in a modern era with the modern technology. So I think that the main role of Reform rabbis today in the world is fine, the fine tuning in between. So people will tell you, "Wow, something new," but I will tell you that this is Judaism from the early days. Judaism changed. I just published a book in Hebrew. I hope that it will be published soon in English. That says to Israelis, look, the concept that Reform Judaism is something new, that modernity in Judaism is something new, it's wrong. Judaism was always about creating a new environment, a new call. Judaism changed according to the time and the place where Jews lived. Jewish life in Poland was not like the Jewish life in Morocco. I It's so different. And the way that the people prayed, it's the same prayers, but the tunes, the energy, the way that the synagogue was built, the role of a rabbi, so different. I am telling from time to time the story of my family. My father's side, as I said earlier to you, come from a Sephardic background. They lived all their life under Islam. The Turkish government was here. Very few Ashkenazic Jews were here. My uncle, great uncle, the uncle of my father, for us was like a grandfather, a big grandfather, the head of the family. He was married to two women at the same time. We're talking about 50s and 60s of last century. And I grew up in Haifa. Before we went to see the game, the football game, soccer game, every Shabbat we went to visit Dod Avram. We had a table, a huge table, all the family. We had lunch there. My uncle Avram used to sit next to his two wives, Johara and Bukas. This is my family, and that was not a love story of an American television or movie. Was a Jewish family. He was married according to the Jewish law, according to the local law of the empire, the Ottoman Empire. Can you imagine to yourself in the 60s where Reform rabbis march calling for human rights, women rights in America, that I was part of that family? You understand that modernity came to Europe a little bit before it came to the East, and it came because of social issues, because of environment, because the influence of the local community. In Europe, 1,000 years before, that, Jews changing the role of the family and the structure of the family. Can you imagine to yourself what type of change it caused to the Jewish world when a rabbi came and says to his followers and then to the rest of the Jewish world, a family is a man and a woman and that's it? Wow! There's a chapter in my book about that change and how much people were against that. from so many reasons. Uh, but it happened. And this is Judaism. You change the attitude. You change the attitude for medicine. You change the attitude for the state of Israel. Yes or no? Yeah. So Judaism is about change. Judaism is about progressing. And always, Daniel, there are voices that says, don't do that. Because if you do that, we lose Judaism. If we'll talk about Israel, land, well, we, 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 we are accustomed to sit in the diaspora. Why to move from Ukraine or why to do that? Why we need that story? Human rights, who needs that? Women rights, who needs that? We're accustomed to a synagogue where there is a separation between men and women. Why to change that? It works very well. No, it doesn't work very well because women doesn't come to the synagogue. And if you go back to the Jewish history, the Jewish roots, you'll discover that there was no women's section in the synagogue, and women came to the synagogue. Men and women sit together in the synagogue in the second temple era, and the time after the second temple, probably until the third of the fourth century. The first Ezrat Nashim, a women's section, was established in the 11th century. Most of the Jews doesn't know that, but this is Judaism. We change according to the time, according to the place where we live. We were already, living in a synagogue where men and women pray together. Why not return to that type of a synagogue while the world is talking about women rights, about egalitarian ceremonies? So this is my call. This is my Judaism, Daniel.
And I definitely agree, and I think that it is very important that Judaism adjusts to the time. And in the previous interview, we actually talked about how uh, right now at least I understood Torah as a book of one God, but it doesn't actually talk about one God. It talks about one God for Jews, but not one God at all. And how
The
in
interpretation can be done like this or like this. There's a very nice quotation from the book of Malachi. There is one God create us, and Abba, one Father to all of us. So you can say this, you can say that. Really, it's less important. The role of religion in the 21st century needs to return to normality, not to separate people, but help them to become better person, better people, better human being in this world. The challenge is enormous. Life also, they're better than any time before. We're sophisticated, we're healthier, but we are lonely. We need, direction. We need, sense of belonging, sense of meaning. And this is God, and this is Judaism for me. I think that this is the main challenge in the first 21st century, how to make us or help us to be a good person in this century, a challenging one.
talking about being a good person and is an act of being a good person, in Judaism there is a concept of Tikkun Olam, repairing and improving the world. How important is Tikkun Olam in Reform Judaism and for Reform Jews?
It's very important. If you go to any Reform synagogue in the world, you'll find Tikkun Olam as wow, as the main issue. Sometimes it calls for criticism. It's also for criticism. You prefer Tikkun Olam than to worship or to live Jewish life. You made Tikkun Olam. We hear that again and again. You made Tikkun Olam as the main story of Judaism, and you neglected the other roles of Judaism. I think, again, fine-tuning in between living Jewish life and Tikkun Olam, helping yourself and helping the world, helping to create a community and feeling good within the community, sense of belonging, being part of something bigger than you. So Tikkun Olam is very important to me as to any Reformed Jew. And I think that it's very important to the world in this point because the world is great, beautiful, but needs to be uh, needs to be changed in a certain way. So many wars, aggravation, anger, frustration. From one side, you see wealth in enormous way, probably never been before that type of wealth in the hands of people, certain people. From the other side, poverty. See what is going on today in Africa and other places. I think that most of the people in this world doesn't live in under the full democracy. Women rights, we talked about that earlier. There are still places where women doesn't have full rights, even in Israel. So we need to do a lot of tikkun olam in this point in our life.
Definitely, definitely. And I want to ask about Daniel Center. You talked about the great impact it has right now on the reform world in general and then the reform world in Israel. How, what is the influence of Daniel Center has on the residents and guests of a city as such a city as Tel Aviv Jaffa?
Tel Aviv, Jaffa is what should I say? Uh, the lighthouse of the Zionist story, as I can see it. This city was built by pioneers that believe that Zionism can bring heal to the Jewish world, can create something very special to this old religion. Um, but Tel Aviv somehow missed the Jewish story. Also, we have in Tel Aviv many synagogues and few communities are living in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv was built mainly by secular Jews that came from the Jewish roots, like the mayor, the legendary mayor, Mayor Dizengoff. They came from Orthodox families, East Europe, but they left Judaism outside of the city. I think that Beit Daniel is trying to do what we didn't do in the past. We didn't we didn't try to create a Jewish spirit in that city that, in a certain way, with all due respect to Jerusalem, is the capital of the Israelis, not the capital of Israel, but the capital of Israelis, the secular Israeli community. Those who works and earns, those who create the high tech, the community that bring Israel to the world, you know, and we need that spirit. And we need that progressive spirit. And this is the role of Beit Daniel, to tell to the people of Tel Aviv, you can be Jewish, you can be proud in your Jewish roots, and you can, in a certain way, live Jewish life in Israel, in Tel Aviv, in your city, not in the Orthodox way that you don't like, doesn't talk to you anymore. By the way, I'm happy to live next to an Orthodox or Haredic Jews if they don't want to take from me my ability to celebrate my Judaism. No, I think that Judaism is should be open, should be thousand faces, but Tel Aviv needs that spirit of reform and liberal Judaism, and I think this is our role. We bring to the Tel Avivians the spirit that says you can pray in a synagogue, but you can sit next to your wife or next to your daughter. Girls can have bat mitzvah. Jews are embracing those who want to convert and not saying don't come, don't we don't like you, we don't. This is Judaism that we developed in Tel Aviv, and I think that because of that, Beit Daniel became who we are, a lighthouse of progressive Judaism in the main Jewish city, except New York and Jerusalem. We are different than New York and Jerusalem as a Jewish city, but I think that is a major opportunity that we confront, and we try to do our best. Sometimes we failed. We don't have the budget, the right tools to do that, but we do whatever we can in order to create that.
Would you say that Beit Daniel Center right now is doing partly the work that should have been done when the State of Israel was established, the work that should have been done by Reform Jews from around the world that missed the opportunity, that missed that didn't realize how crucial for the Jewish people the state of Israel will be?
Yeah, short answer. I'm still, I can't say angry. I'm I think we failed in the 40s. By the way, there were very important rabbis that understood that, tried to do their best. I admire Rabbi Yehuda Lev Magnus, that was the senior rabbi of Temple Emmanuel in New York. He was calling in his time, the 20s of the last century, for social justice in the main temple in New York, the temple of the rich Jewish guys, the German Jewish guys. He left the synagogue, was very angry. Was there, his community was very angry about him, and he moved to Israel. He brought donors, and he was the first president of the Hebrew University. He was the one that put Hebrew University, and I mean, probably that would be done without him, but he was the first fundraiser, the main spirit, putting the bricks together and bringing the best professor from Germany. He collected the money to do that. For years, he was the chancellor of the Hebrew University. Uh, People like him, like Abba Hillel Silver, but most of our movements, reform or conservative, were not part of the journey toward Israel, didn't understand the impact of a Jewish state and the role that the Jewish state will play. You can see today in the world how Israel impact Judaism and the life of Jews all over the world. And we were not part of the story until recently. Me and my community reflect different type of Jews, not who immigrate to Israel, those who grew up in Israel. I'm a very different rabbis than previous generation of rabbis that were those who came from United States, England, South Africa. And this is, I think, the part of the Reform Judaism in Israel, that the fact that we are rooted, we grew up in Israel. My generation, the Reform rabbis, we grew up in Israel, we served in the army. We look upon Judaism in a very different way than the previous generation that saw Israel sometimes from their places around the world as a journey, but who knows what that journey will, we understand very well that we are main part of the Jewish world today, and what will happen in Israel, the type of Israel that we will build, the type of Israel that will exist, will be a major story in the Jewish life.
Thank you so much. A really interesting answer. And it's really interesting how reform Judaisms around the world have different influence and different goals. And it is really interesting that and truly important what the reform movement in Israel does. And my next question, I will start with a joke. It's a very well-known Jewish joke. Every morning, a poor Jew goes to a synagogue and prays, "Please, God, let me win a lottery. Nothing else can fix my life like winning a lottery." Morning after morning, he prays, "Please, God, let me win a lottery." Finally, he receives an answer. In the middle of his prayers, God speaks to him and says, "Moshe, meet me halfway, buy a ticket." How can we meet God halfway? Not only by praying, but also by creating temples, educational institutions, where people would come to continue their dialogue with the Creator and learn about how to build relationships with their loved ones and with their neighbors.
I think that the answer is in your question. I think that God is this story, but at the same time is not the story. The story is our life, the way that we live, the way that we conduct our life in this world, the way that our community behave, the way that the country or the world behave. So Judaism is not just about searching for God. It says search for meaning, search for the right way to live. And the way that I know to help you, to help us to do that is by creating communities, communities of praying, community of learning, create communities of meaning. And this is Judaism, as I understand it. You know, I have in my community people that doesn't go to the synagogue to pray, but come to the synagogue to learn. At the same time, I have people that just come to pray, but doesn't feel necessary to learn because they feel that they have the knowledge, or they are searching God, or searching a better life, or achieving a better life by praying, or by, you know. So we need in this world not to force people, but to offer them a variety of activities and a variety of options to create from themselves a life full with meaning and wisdom and spirit. And this is the role of a rabbi today. He's not tell you, well, this is what you need to do and this is it, but help the people to find themselves within the version that exists of what is Judaism and why we need Judaism.
Would you say that also one of the roles of the rabbi and clergy in general, in today's world is to be a successful nonprofit manager, how to work with the team, with congregants, with
Yes.
sponsors, with
Yes,
authorities?
does not understand rabbis that does not understand the role of NGO won't have a easy life. You can do that by putting the right staff to help you, the right volunteers, lay leaders to help you, but you have to be inspiration. You have to fix a direction, to find sources of income. To build your community and help people to be inspired. You know, in Beit Daniel, we, at a certain point, thought about source of income. We knew that the government won't support it as they support the Orthodox world, and we said, well, let's think out of the box, and we created a place called Mishkenot Daniel. It's a guest house in Jaffa. It's a beautiful building. We raised the funds to build the building. It's a guest house and education center. We have in a regular year, not a war year, 60,000 guests from all over the world. People mainly from Taglit, Birthright, and other Jewish organization, source of pride to our community, but at the same time, source of income to our community. And this allows us to do the work that we do. We bring, income to so many people in Jaffa, sometimes from full family. Many people works in the building, but at the same time, we have the ability to tell the story of who we are to those who are coming to visit us. So I think, yes, a rabbi needs to be inspiration. At the same time, inspiration is not just in the religious side, but to be able to create your own structure. By the way, it's not new. I think rabbis always had the difficulties to run the Bet Midrash, the synagogue. They had to confront the challenge of providing the necessary tools to the community. If it was a cemetery, it was a school, rabbis was a fundraiser, always. There was nobody there to help them. Except the lay leaders, the community itself. So the rabbi needs to be a source of inspiration to get the tools in order to build the community or to rebuild the community.
And clergy, I would assume that clergy of different religions have same problems and same uh, concerns that they face. Do you think that partly clergy of different faiths can be brought closer by the challenges they face and display a mutual understanding between them in a way of helping each other solve those problems?
Yeah, no doubt. I was once in a seminar in New York, clergy, mainly Jews and Christians, challenging the question of how to bring people to the synagogue or the church, how to bring people back to the halls that they have, to the building that they have. It was quite interesting to learn from priests their challenge, and to hear from different rabbis, different answers. I think that rabbis and people from the Islam, leaders from the Islam side in the land of Israel, land of Palestine, needs to work together to achieve peace and to bring prosperity to our community. We work, as I said earlier, in Jaffa very much. We have a guest house in Jaffa. I think we have a common challenge between us and the local Christian and Muslim community. When terrorists attacked Jaffa just a few months ago and killed people in the street, it's a challenge not just for the Jewish community, it's a challenge to the Christians and to the Muslim community. I don't think that there's a religious person that wants that type of environment. All of us wants to have peace and prosperity and fight those evil voices that are coming from within the religion. Within Islam, we're not talking today about the situation, but from Islam, very bad voices, and from Judaism as well. So I think that there's so much that can be done by religious leaders to bring the world to a better place. We need to talk more. We need to find more solutions together.
Could you talk a little bit more about your experience with interfaith communication and what maybe can be solved by interfaith communication?
We do enough, as we said, we do from time to time prayers. We meet sometimes. I tell you a story. I wrote once. We celebrate every year Shavuot, the main holiday, by having a full night of studies. Hundreds of people in our synagogue, different type of workshops and lectures. We bring non-Jews to speak there, to hear from them the Spirit. One year we learned about King David. That was King David was born in Shavuot. The idea is so it's very interesting to hear from a priest, a scholar that comes from the Christian tradition, the role of King David. The spirit is very different and very interesting compared to who is David in the Jewish tradition. We brought a Kadi to the synagogue. We talk about different type of beliefs. It was quite interesting, and I'm going to churches and I'm going to mosques. We do a lot, but we don't do enough. I hope that we will be able to do more.
Do you think that it is more complicated to conduct interfaith communications with people in Israel, since Israel has much more Jews than representatives of other religion? Maybe it is easier to have that type of interfaith communication in Europe or in the US.
Look, it's a different communication. It's a different story. It's a different story because we are here the majority in Israel. When you go any other place in the world, you are the minority. I think that the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, Israel and the Muslim world, reflect that connection. So it's a very different communication. It's easier to do that in the United States with the next church, next door, evangelist church, or I don't know. It's very complicated to do that in Israel, while part of the Muslim feel very, very unpleasant in the Jewish environment. We have a challenge to do that in Israel. The complication is enormous. It's not just you have Jesus and we don't have Jesus. You have this and we don't have that. It's the story of the conflict is there, and the conflict is not a few thousand miles from your hometown. The conflict is in our community. We work in schools. Our education department works in schools. The schools sometimes are mixed between Jews and Muslims, Jews and Christians. How you work in a school like this in a time of war? Think about a school like this in Jaffa in a time of a war, when the Israeli kid, his brother is in Gaza, and the Arab kid his uncle is in Gaza. Both are fighting right now, and you have the kids in the schools. Can you imagine to yourself the tension and the difference between the two communities? It's not America. It's quite complicated.
Thank you for the answer. Really interesting, and we soon hope for those conflicts to be solved
One day
peacefully.
it will be solved. Don't worry. The nature of this world tells us that at a certain point, even large conflicts ended. With all the tension that exists today, right in Europe, you could imagine yourself what was the situation in Europe 80 years ago. So you can cross today Germany and France, and there's no border there. Think about 80 years ago. So one day, I think, I hope, I pray, I'm a man of belief.
Definitely, definitely. One last question from me. If the if you had a chance, if you had an opportunity to ask God one question directly, what would the question be?
Well, I will try to play a Jewish way, and I will ask God to sit with me for a coffee, and then I will be able to ask more than one question. I have so many questions to God, so I will try to get more than one. And I think that in that point, God will laugh and will say, "Well, let's have coffee and talk a little bit more." And then I will raise a lot of questions from why evil is here, and probably will tell you that you won't understand good, and you won't understand the good side of the world without evil, without and then step by step we'll give you an answer that already exists in the Jewish sources and the Jewish story in the Bible. And the question that I will ask is and add maybe in the end when the conflict will end, when we'll be able to live in Israel in peace, and then he will answer, the answer. The answer is when you make it, when you make the efforts, when you fight to get the peace, and not the war. When we think, think out of the box. I think that conversation will be interesting, fascinating, but at the same time, he will give me answers that I already have in the Jewish tradition.
Definitely, and I think that it is a possibility for each and every one of us to work towards peace and to work towards solving the conflict and the other conflicts that are around the world. Dear Rabbi Meir, thank you for the time and the great opportunity to learn from you. Toda rabah.
Thank you. And I would like to use this opportunity, Daniel, to ask, to offer to your viewers, your people that listen to this interview, to visit us in Tel Aviv and Beit Daniel. Look for us in the network around the world, Daniel Centers for Progressive Judaism or Beit Daniel. Come visit us, make sure that when you visit Israel, come and see these beautiful communities. We are more than one synagogue, so choose one. Thank you for having me, Daniel, and good luck your mission to bring Jewish spirit to the world.
Thank you so much. Dear friends, thank you for watching my channel. Please react to the podcast, like, subscribe, repost. All reactions are welcome. See you soon on my podcast, Keeping the Faith.